Notice to the public, if you wish to address the council, please complete the wishing to address the council form located on either end of the counter and give it to either the chairman or the council clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. All comments must be addressed to the council as a whole. Addressing individual council members or staff is not allowed. Speakers should be courteous in their choice of words and actions, and comments shall be limited to the issue and cannot involve individuals or staff-related matters. All cell phones and electronic devices used for communication should be silenced for the duration of the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting of the Terrebonne Parish Budget and Finance Committee to order. We'll have the invocation by Mr. Carl Harding, and I'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, as we come here today, O God, we are assembled here, O God, because of your grace and your mercy that has found us on the land of the living, O God. And with that to be said, that those that are gone on in Terrebonne Parish and those friends and relatives and throughout and about the United States of America, we want to understand, O God, that the love from one man to another man, and that you sent your darling son Jesus to die for all men. We ask, O God, that love that goes from heart to heart and breast to breast, O God, be endowed within this meeting, within our communities, and within our state and our country, O God. We ask that the blessings come with all power and understanding from on high, O God, that this meeting, O God, may be carried out unselfishly, O God, but then take care of the affairs that are more pleasing in your eyesight. We ask this blessing and all other blessings in your darling son Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Harding. Ms. Charlie, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Pledger, Mr. Harding, Mr. Voisin, Mr. Amity, Mr. Champagne, Mr. Hamner, Mr. Babin, Ms. Chauvin, Mr. Trustclair. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum present.
Thanks, Ms. Charlie. Item number 1, concurring with Parish Administration to award bid 24-SWASTE-13 rebid number 2, purchase of 2 new unused terminal tractors to Kenworth of Louisiana and reject the bid of TCI Transportation. Move Mr. Steve Trosclair. Second, Mr. Kevin Champagne. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0, motion passes. Item number 2, declaring computers and miscellaneous equipment from various departments, divisions having a value of less than $5,000 as surplus and authorizing said items to be disposed of by any legally approved methods. Move Mr. John Amity, second Mr. Carl Harding. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0, motion passes. Item number 3, awarding the request for bids, RFBS, received for Hurricane Ida repairs to D18 Pump Station, Gabby Court, to Chad Daigle Building Contractors Incorporated, and authorizing the parish president to execute the contract and to provide for related matters. Move Mr. Danny Babin. Second, Mr. Clyde Hamner. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0, motion passes. Item number 4, authorizing the parish president to execute the Department of Health Office of Public Health Strategic National Stockpile, SNS, Cities Readiness Initiative, CRI, grant for the expense of planning and processing of the 48-hour mass antibiotic dispensing plan. Move Mr. John Amity. Second, Mr. Kevin Champagne. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. The vote's 9-0, motion passes. Item number 5, authorizing the parish president to execute the Emergency Management Performance Grant, fiscal year 2024, number EMT-2024-EP-00001, S01 from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, GOSEP, for operational expenses of the Terrebonne Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. Move Mr. John Amity.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clyde Hamner. Mr. Carl Hardy.
Yeah, and for the record, that's $58,000 is actually, Ms. Candace came to the parish, and we actually using that for training and all the other things that comes up. I just want to put the dollar amount out there also. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Harding. Thanks, Mr. Harding. Seeing no further lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0. Item number 6, concurring with parish administration to award the request for proposal, RFP number 24-locate-26 utility locate services for the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government Utilities Department to USIC Locating Services, LLC. Move Mr. Danny Babin, second Mr. Carl Harding. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0, motion passes. Item number 7, concurring with the parish administration to award the request for proposal, RFP number 24-CUSTSV-25 meter reading services for the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government Finance Department Customer Service Division to Olemeter Corporation. Move Mr. Danny Babin, second Mr. Clyde Hamner. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0. Item number 8, to award the request for proposal RFP for employee benefits producer of record for Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government employee benefits has been pulled per administration. Item number 9, consider the introduction of an ordinance declaring a Generac generator without transfer switch from the Utilities Department having a value of $5,000 as surplus and authorizing said item to be disposed of by any legally approved methods and calling a public hearing on said matter on October 30th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m.
Move.
Move Mr. Clyde Hamner. Second, Mr. Danny Babin. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0, motion passes. Item number 10, consider the introduction of an ordinance to amend the 2024 adopted operating budget and 5-year capital outlay budget of the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government for the following items and to provide for related matters. Item number 1, animal shelter, HVAC, $43,752. Item number 2, utility fund, $381,000. Item number 3, Homeland Police Department, $3,458. Item number 4, Section 8 Housing Voucher Program, $674,181. Item number 5, Homeland Police Department, $895. Item number 6, Brady Road Bridge Replacement, $375,000. Item number 7, Bayou Terrebonne Clear Snag Project, $600,000. Item number 8, American Rescue Plan, $2,854,058. Item number 9, Emergency Preparedness Department, EMPG, $17,500, and calling a public hearing on said matter on October 30th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Move Mr.
Second.
Amity, second Mr. Clyde Hamner. Ms. Kim Chauvin?
Okay, I have a few questions about it. The animal shelter HVAC, you said it's coming from the sales tax fund? Okay. The utility fund, where is that being taken from? The 381?
The 381,000 is coming from their net position, so from their retained earnings or savings.
Okay. The Section 8 housing voucher program, where did it come from?
That is coming, it's a grant from the state, so it's just money coming in that's allowing us to go out. And there
Okay, so
is
that's a
no
grant.
additional match on our part, so it's just pure profit, not profit, but pure revenue coming in.
Okay, question, all right. Bayou Terrebonne Clear Snag Project, it's $600,000. but you're taking it from drainage to clean out.
It's coming from the drainage fund balance. So it was a savings that we had that we're not projecting to use for the end of this year that we're able to put into this project.
Okay, just a question. I have tons of drainage problems in District 8, so I'm just kind of looking at this and thinking, why aren't we fixing something in subdivisions for drainage? Like I have like Cleveland Street that on a hard rain, those guys are flooding. I have some of the other ones where their sewage is coming up in their homes. So I'm trying to just kind of wonder like why we're taking it from there to put it in. Is it really a surplus if we still have issues in drainage?
So I will tell you, and then I'll let Noah
Okay.
give some. This is some funding that we had put aside. It's some money that we've had with statewide flood control for a long time, and we're having to put up a match that we hadn't funded for previously. So if we wouldn't put up this money, we wouldn't be able to do any of that. But I'll let Noah, expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So this is money for engineering. So there's 5 phases to this Bayou Terrebonne dredging project. To date, I think we've only done phase 1 and 2, not even completely phase 2. But all that money is for the construction of the project, that $8 million that we have. We're responsible for the engineering. GIS has been contracted to do the first 2 phases and some geotech work to determine the bank stability. Beyond that, they have not been contracted to perform the project management or the engineering for the rest of this project. And again, this is money that we already received to do the construction, but the engineering is something that we're responsible for.
Okay, so what stretch of the bayou will this cover? Bayou Terrebonne.
So it's in your backup, and I don't remember exactly where it starts, but it's pretty much the northern half. This is like Hollywood to pretty much Thibodaux is phase 3, 4, and 5. Phase 2, phase 1 is the hospital downtown area and to like Broadmoor.
All right. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
So I just want to add with the other areas that you're talking about, we're in a few different conversations, with the wastewater study, the stormwater study. One of the things we'll also be doing is a road study just to get the priorities listed out, how much these things are going to cost to get some repairs done, a lot of the old clay, infrastructure and all. So I know we're looking at some grants through watershed initiatives and some other funding. And so in these situations where we can take that funding coming in and apply it to that project, that's what we're looking to do and leading that with that the water wastewater study and the stormwater study. So definitely all stuff we know it needs to get done.
I apologize, I misspoke. So the backup that's going to tell you where all those projects are at is the Public Service Committee. So the actual project for the amendment to that agreement, that's going to be in Public Services Committee. But that's going to show you the phases of the project, what's been done and what has not been done. So we can talk about it when we get to that meeting.
That's it, Ms. Kim? Ms. Kim, you good? Good. You guys good? Mr. Daniel Babin?
Yeah, Candace, on the Brady Road bridge replacement, facilities planning, that $375,000, is that going towards engineering? Are we moving on engineering on that? Okay, the rest is we waiting on capital outlay. All right, thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Kim.
So we're recognizing 375,000 right now, but we had previously recognized some other funding. So we're just getting us to the amount that the state has given us the funding summary for. I didn't want everybody to think it was just the 375. It is more than that. Yeah. Right.
Thanks, Ms. Candace. Mr. Carl Harding?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Hit your light again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my concern also was item number 8 in reference to the $600,000, and like Mr. Leary had stated, out of my reading, there's going to be some conversation about that, and I just wanted to actually point out that $600,000 was taken away from the drainage fund balance. And I guess to make the statement now, because of the Brady Road bridge, item number 6, and this one is not item number 7, I'm sorry. We pay a lot of money in engineering fees, and sometimes we have to come up with the money we want. I would hope that we're going forward and we're making these adjustments, but because I think the original Bayou Terrebonne cleanup and everything like that, money was found that had been sitting there for a number of years, correct? But yeah, right. But by the same token, the engineers are being paid. So if we're looking at doing engineering studies, we want to be at a point where we don't have money sitting there for 14, 15, 20 years, which because we've had a meeting, we have to move forward with these projects. You know what I mean? It's all right for the local businesses to be making money in engineering fees, but just let's get the plan. If it's 5 years and it's 20 years down the line and nothing done, we just spent a lot of money and made an investment with just engineering fees. So let's be mindful about what we're doing here and how we're transferring and when we can complete these projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Harding. Seeing no further lights, I do have one question, and this is probably for legal. And this is just for, I know we had this discussion before when it comes to when we're making adjustments to the budget and 5-year capital outlay. Can items be actually line item to where we can take certain things out, and or does it have to be done in total of having to, if we had questions or something like that? That's a question I would like to, if you can look into that, or if you can answer it now, it'd be great. Okay, well, go, here you go.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I did do the research on this earlier on in the year. So the council is required to adopt or to reject the ordinance as written. And so when you present an ordinance before the council, it's got to be presented in writing. It's got to be published. There's got to be a public hearing on it. And if there's any changes made to it, you have to republish and reschedule the public hearing. So the council would have to adopt or the only option is to adopt or not adopt whenever you get to the public hearing. So there's no line item, I guess you would call it a line item veto that the council would have.
So basically, just so I'm clear, it's all or nothing. But if it's something specifically, we could, if we had a disagreement on, say, one line item, we can just vote to do it to.
At the detriment of the rest of it.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Mr. Hamner?
That last question you had was mine too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We would have to just vote down the whole ordinance because of one item, whether it's a big item or a small item, and then which could mean postponing budgetary issues for quite a while. Depending on how quick, because it would be the next month.
Yes, sir. So if you would vote it down in order to go back to the drawing board, you would essentially be rescheduling the public hearing for another month away.
So like he said, if there are 8 items on the list and there's this one item of contention, the other 8 cannot go forward.
Correct.
Good, Mr. Hamner?
Yeah, you had really, that was your question, and
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mr. Babin?
Yeah, but along that line, if there was a question on one of the particular items on there and we voted it down, or we voted to continue until 2 weeks down the line, we wouldn't substantially change it. We just had more questions on it. Could it still be brought up 2 weeks later?
Yes, sir. So if you table it tonight and this comes up for the next council meeting, and then the vote would still be on what's in front of you tonight.
Correct.
Because all you're doing is tabling it. If you want to change it, then
Then you
you
have to start the
restart.
process.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Babin. Thank you,
Ms. Neal.
Ms. Neal.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mr. Pledger.
Mr. Hardy.
So in this particular situation with this particular item, it's calling for a public hearing, correct? So in that public hearing, we get to this point, and then that's when we actually hear from the public. Now, the public, in my opinion, are looking at individual items that we have here. So we don't have to hold it off. We can actually bring it to the public. Then at that time, are there any changes that could be made to it? If there is to be made to it at that particular time.
If you decide you want to reject the ordinance to change it, then you would have to reject it and then start over. Or you would be able to amend, but then it's all starting over if you reject it.
Yeah, it's all starting over. Now, could I ask this question also? Say, for instance, we have 10 items here, right? And we run into some type of impasse. Would it be a cordial thing to do if we have a particular interest with a particular item? I guess not to you, Miss Neal. It would be more to the administration. Would it be more of something to talk about between the administration and the council if we differ about something, to take the item off and make it one individual item? And actually, if it puts us in a position or the mindset of having something being held hostage like the Brady Road Bridge replacement for animal shelter. So, we can create an individual item as going forward from that point. That would be a consideration then too. I'm just putting it out there for the council going
Yes,
forward.
sir.
Yeah.
If you adopt this ordinance at public hearing at your next meeting, and then you and the administration wanted to get together to discuss, there's always an opportunity to do another budget amendment if you all can agree on it.
Right.
Mhm.
With a particular item.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Mr. Harding. Seeing no further lights, members vote your machines. Votes 8-1. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Amady, second by Mr. Carl Harding. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Votes 9-0, motion passes. Good evening.
Notice to the public, if you wish to address the council, please complete the public wishing to address the council form located on either end of the counter and give it to either the chairman or the council clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. All comments must be addressed to the council as a whole. Addressing individual council members or staff is not allowed. Speakers should be courteous in their choice of words, and actions and comments shall be limited to the issue and cannot involve individuals or staff-related matters. Thank you. All cell phones and electronic devices used for communication should be silenced for the duration of the meeting. Call the meeting to order. We'll have prayer and pledge of allegiance. Lord, come before you in Jesus' name. We ask you that we would calmly work together and get things done for our parish, that we would put our work together in unity and move forward. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm doing. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, that's that stuff. It's all good. Okay. Charlie, can you give us a roll call, please? Yeah. My mind.
Mr. Pledger, Mr. Harding, Mr. Voisin, Mr. Amity, Mr. Champagne, Mr. Hamner, Mr. Babin, Ms. Chauvin,
Here.
Mr. Trustclair. Madam Chairwoman, you have a quorum present.
Thank you. Okay, number one, resolution calling a condemnation hearing on the residential mobile home at 206 Fresno Drive, owned by Mary Fleming. Calling the condemnation here, number two, calling the condemnation hearing on residential structure at 204 Roselawn Avenue, owned by Lawrence and Pam Williams. Number three, calling the condemnation hearing on the residential structure at 109 Smith Lane, owned by Estate Bertha Clark Turner Newton, Joyce T. Harris, Joseph Townsend, Wayne Townsend, Jesse Townsend, Ray Charles Townsend, Southern Townsend Jr., trustee for the Mary Johnson and Townsend and Southern Townsend Trust, Brenda T. Washington. Number four, calling the condemnation hearing on the residential and accessory structure at 100 Finch Row, owned by Dale C. Toops. Five, calling condemnation hearing on the residential structure at 1120 Berg Street, owned by Tina M. Harris. Six, residential mobile home at 145 American Boulevard, owned by William and Shaquilla George Lyons Jr. Seven, residential mobile home at 632 Aragon Road, owned by Troy M. and Samantha Verdant Chauvin. Eight, a residential structure at 6891 Highway 56, owned by Russell G. Zenner Jr. Nine, residential structure at 102 Union Street, owned by Irene Janetta Melody Williams. 10, residential mobile home at 154 Red Street, owned by Estate Albert J. Harris. 11, commercial structure at 7719 Main Street, owned by Cascade Ventures LLC. 12, residential and accessory structure at 7166 West Park Avenue, owned by Jesse LLC. 13, residential and accessory structures at 7170 Park Avenue, owned by Jesse LLC. 14, residential mobile home at 326 Sterling Drive, owned by Russell and Candy Billiot Singleton Jr. 15, residential structure at 810 Honduras Street, owned by Alfred and Yvette Hall Jr. 16, residential structure at 248 McKinley Street, owned by Lincoln LLC. 17, commercial structure at 7347 Park Avenue, owned by Nazar N. Amri. 18, residential structure at 7491 Park Avenue, owned by Homa Terrebonne Housing Authority. 19, residential structure at 426 Highway 311, owned by Taylor Nixon. 20, commercial structure at 5709 Park Avenue, owned by Cha 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 LLC. 21, residential structure located at 213 Oak Street, owned by William Alexander Osmeyer. 22, residential structure located at 127 Scott Lane, owned by Joe Harris, care of Tina Harris. 23, residential and accessory structure located at 6851 West Park Avenue, owned by Estate Houston Francis Abear. 24, residential structure located at 7435 Main Street, owned by Mardi Gras Compost LLC. 25, residential structure located at 408 Maplewood Drive, owned by Reynolds C. Laperouse. 26, residential structure located at 117 Henderson Street, Street 2, owned by Plantation Trace Apartments LLC. 27, residential structure located at 117 Henderson Street, Street 1, owned by Plantation Trace Apartments. 28, residential structure located at 119 Henderson Street, owned by Plantation Trace Apartments. 29, residential structure located at 254 Colar Street, owned by Plantation Trace Apartments LLC. 30, residential structure at 140 Red Street, owned by Mary Dyer Woods, care of Marcia Connor. 31, residential structure at 7366 Park Avenue, owned by Kervin Willis, Helen Willis Douglas, and Mabel Willis, care of Freddie Douglas. 32, residential structure at 5507 Smith Street, owned by Darren Champagne. 33, residential mobile home at 215 Harris Street, owned by Gerald Harris. 34, residential structure at 105 St. Matt Street, owned by Mrs. Daniel Smith, DBA Augustine Redmond Smith, care of Darnell Allen and Adeline Marie Maddox. 35, commercial structure at 5559 Highway 56, owned by World Business Lenders LLC, DBA WBL SBO 2 LLC, and Trisha Jade LLC. 36, residential structure at 174 Porsche Lane, owned by Estate Edward Franklin, care of Zenobia Bolden. 37, commercial structure at 7372 Park Avenue, owned by Chauvin Real Estate Agency LLC. 38, residential structure at 7439 Main Street, owned by Mardi Gras Compost LLC. 39, residential mobile home at 218 Mulberry Street, owned by William Jeffrey. 40, residential structure at 1114 Barrel Street, owned by Olivia Celestine LeBlanc, care of Susan Franklin, Clara Celestine Daniel, Louise Celestine Barrett, Laura Celestine Morgan, Thelma Wallace Williams, Helen Wallace Dabney, Marguerite Wallace Van Buren, Lucille Wallace Vincent, Gloria Wallace Butler, Clinton Wallace Jr., J.C. Wallace, Charles Wallace, Norris Wallace, John L. Wallace, Robert Wallace, Jacqueline Davis Bolter, Joyce Davis Stewart, Lena Davis Clark, Edame Norman Smith, Cecile Norman, Mary Norman Simmons, Edward Norman, Herman Norman, Sylvia Norman Simmons, Daryl Jameson, Dawn Jameson, Darius Jameson, David Jameson, Darren Jameson, Nanette Nichols' cousin, and Rona Mason. 41, residential mobile home and debris located at 4655, 4657, 4659, 4661, and 4667 Main Street, West Main Street, owned by Jeffrey Paul Mouton. 42, oh, sorry. Hold up, I'm just going. Hold up. Okay, so those condemnations on October 29th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Moved by Mr. Trosclair.
Can you repeat that?
Second by Mr. Wazan. Seeing no lights, vote your machines. Oh my Jesus. 9 yeas. Okay, moving on. 8, sorry. Okay. 42, resolution giving notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the parish of Terrebonne so as to rezone from OL, open land, to C2, general commercial, 1923 St. Louis Canal Road, Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana, Walton Jefferson and Jeanette Daisy, applicant, calling a public hearing on said matter for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Mr. Trosclair. Second, who's second? Oh, a second by Mr. Champagne. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Okay. Oh, you didn't vote? 8. Okay, 8 yeas, passes 43. Giving notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the parish of Terrebonne so as to rezone from R1 single-family residential to R2 two-family residential, 114 Banks Avenue, Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. Cheryl Williams, applicant, and calling a public hearing on said matter for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Mr. Pledger, second by Mr. Harding. Seeing the lights, members vote your machine. Nine yeas, passes. Motion adjourned by Mr. Wazan, seconded by Mr. Champagne. Members vote your machines. And we are off.
Notice to the public If you wish to address the council, please complete the public wishing to address the council form located on either end of the counter and give it to either the chairman or the council clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. All comments must be addressed to the council as a whole. Addressing individual council members or staff is not allowed. Speakers should be courteous in their choice of words and actions, and comments shall be limited to the issue and cannot involve individual or staff-related matters. Thank you. All cell phones and electronic devices used for communication should be silenced for the duration of the meeting. I'll now call the meeting of the Policy, Procedure, and Legal Committee to order. Please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance to be led by Mr. Danny Babin.
Heavenly Father, we come today to conduct business for Terrebonne Parish. Please grant us your wisdom so we can make the decisions for this great community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you got to pull my chair out. I just saw that.
It's the same one?
Have order. We'll have roll call now.
Mr. Pledger, Mr. Harding, Mr. Voisin, Mr. Amity, Mr. Champagne, Mr. Hamner,
Here.
Mr. Babin, Ms. Chauvin, Mr. Trustclair. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum present.
Thank you. Item 1, approve the co-sponsorship request from the Terrebonne Children's Advocacy Center, Terrebonne Parish District Attorney's Office for the Terrebonne Children's Advocacy Center's Halloween Bash to be held October 26, 2024, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Courthouse Square. Moved by Ms. Chauvin, seconded by Mr. Champagne. Seeing no lights, members vote your machine. Motion passes 9-0. Item 2, resolution approving the holding of an election in Recreation District Number 11, Parish of Terrebonne, State of Louisiana, on March 29, 2025, to authorize the renewal of a special tax therein. Moved by Mr. Pledger, second by Ms. Chauvin. Is that your light, Mr. Harding? Mr. Harding?
Yes, I'm so glad that this is on here. I think the quality of life, which is recreation, these recreation districts are very, very important throughout Terrebonne Parish. So March 29, 2025, the renewal of a special tax for there, I would recommend those people that that's associated with these this recreation district would seriously consider voting. Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, members vote your machine. Motion passes 9-0. Item 3, consideration of the introduction of an ordinance to enact Section 19-223 of Chapter 19, Article 4 of the Terrebonne Parish Code of Ordinances to create the criminal offense of and establishing penalties for public urination on public property and during public events in Terrebonne Parish, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, October 30, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Mr. Harding. Second by Mr. Babin. Seeing no lights, members vote your machine. Motion for public hearing passes 9-all. Item 4. Item 4, consideration of the introduction of an ordinance to amend Section 2-403 through Section 2-406 in Article 8 of Chapter 2 of the Terrebonne Parish Code of Ordinances, cultural facilities, and to add the Civic Center to the list of facilities subject to fee waivers, to restrict fee waivers to governmental entities hosting civic, safety, health, and economic events open to the public, to provide for non-commercial rental, discounts and to revise rental rates and to provide for matters relative thereto, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, October 30, 2024 at 6:30 PM. We got the parish attorney.
Yes, thank you. I'm just noticing that there was a typo. The public hearing should be scheduled for November 20th instead of October 30th. This has some new fees or some increased fees, so that requires a 30-day layover. So it should
Okay.
be the November 20th should be the public hearing, yes.
Yeah, everything's the same except the date is November 20th for the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
All right, moved by Danny Babin, seconded by Mr. Harding. You got your light on, Mr. Harding? Or is that open?
Yes, it's on. Yeah, and going forward, I want to know the co-sponsorship, and actually it comes out later on in the backup. And I want to put it out there for those people that may want to come out to actually look at this. The co-sponsorship that Terrebonne Parish has with the Civic Center and all the other centers. All right. When we have the co-sponsorship, this does not actually exempt some of the nonprofits, right? Miss Neal?
Yes, sir. The co-sponsorship is separate and apart from the things in the ordinance that you see in front of you.
Mm-hmm. And also, in the event, they use the Civic Center because they're going up on the prices, but then there are co-sponsorships. And let's say, for instance, if someone wanted within consolidated government or a nonprofit uses Dumas Auditorium, okay? But with the Civic Center, the parking lot and access to water and everything else does not go along with the circumstances with the rentals or waiving of the fees.
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry, Mr. Harding.
So if I rent the Civic Center, do I get access to the parking lot and all the water? Or if I actually rent the parking lot or use the parking lot and not have access to the Civic Center?
So I think I understand where you're coming from. So if you rent the Civic Center, there is parking available for your event. But if you rent the parking lot as an additional cost, then there's a reservation for the parking. And so they'll block, to my understanding, they'll block off that section of the parking lot that you rent for your event. And I think that the water hookups come with the RV rentals in the Civic Center parking lot. So it's separate.
Mm.
Now there is, to your point about nonprofit groups, you'll find in the ordinance that there is an opportunity for nonprofits. It's called a non-commercial rate. So there is non-commercial rates for the municipal, the Dumas Auditorium, and you'll see that on page 3 of 7 of the ordinance,
50%.
which is
50%.
50%. And I think that we put that in there for the Civic Center as well. Let me find it for you. That will be under page 5 of 7, non-commercial groups. And I can't find the discount, but it's somewhere in there. That's on the bottom of page 4 on 7.
4 or 7?
4 of 7. Thanks.
Number 9. Okay, that was kind of vague and dark. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
80. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I thank you, Ms. Neal, And I just want to put some things out there in case someone didn't read or they have opposition.
Yeah, I turned you off. There you go.
Okay, and just putting it out there because those was questions that we were asked. I was asked in reference to the Civic Center because it was added on, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna be posting our increases that we're gonna have for these facilities also. Thank you.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the, when you talk about the water, I know like if you rent the Civic Center for an internal event, you get parking. But if you want to rent the parking lot only for some events that are just outside, then you start the conversations of water for those facilities when it doesn't relate to camping and, definitely trying to make sure all that's clear and understood. So I hope that answers your question about whether you get water. Depends on what you rent, how you rent it, and what's included, again, if you have a camper or not.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I actually asked that question because we were looking at another situation that we were dealing with earlier. So we don't apples and oranges. We want to make sure that we got them in two different baskets.
Done?
Mhm.
Mr. Trosclair?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to find it. I can't find it and how I've seen it before, but on the non-commercial or nonprofit discounts, there's an exclusion that says there's a couple of exclusions, but one of them's carnival. What is carnival? I don't know. I'm looking for it. I had it. It was one of the exclusions under the non-commercial, nonprofit, discounts.
Oh, are you talking about 5 of 7 at the top? No, 5 of 7.
I can't find it.
Look, is this? It's saying it's not a non.
She has it.
Go ahead, Ms. Neal.
So you are looking for, this is on page 3 of 7.
Read.
Under D, definition of non-commercial group, there's a list of organizations that are representative. Let's see, organizations that represent, promote specific religions, politics, political parties, candidates, and our carnival activities
Carnival
are,
activity, that's the one.
right, are non-commercial groups for the purposes of this section. Are not non-commercial groups. So those would be excluded.
So what is carnival activities?
I think they would be Mardi Gras. I don't know. Let me check and see if we've defined it in the code somewhere.
Because I really don't think that we need to exclude Mardi Gras clubs from the nonprofit discounts or non-commercial discounts. I mean, that's kind of being counterproductive, what we're trying to be here.
Anything else, Mr. Trosclair?
Plus, she's answering my
Okay.
question still.
So everything that I see in the code that talks about carnival is related to Mardi Gras. So without there being another definition directly about what carnival means, I would interpret that to mean Mardi Gras.
Okay, well, I mean, I would advise the council not to ratify this as it states, because, I mean, I don't think we need to be penalizing Mardi Gras. They are nonprofit, they are non-commercial, so they meet the definition of our, definition of non-commercial or nonprofits. So, I mean, there's really, I mean, that would be ludicrous for us to start charging, we've been giving discounts all these years. There's no reason to stop it now. Thank you.
Mr. Babin?
Yeah, since you brought that up, was that the intent or was that an oversight? Do we know? Mr. Bergeron?
Mr.
So I can tell
Bergeron?
you, we went through the process of looking at rental fees for the last, think the last time this changed was the nineties. And comparing that to other facilities similar around the state, and took a lot of this and put it in there. So I know that there's conversations about what is charged, what is waived. I know we've had a lot of conversations with this group at the Civic Center, and one of the problems that we are having is the buildings being such disrepair, not having the opportunity. This is all being driven by the fact that this is historically not made a profit, and as we continue on this road, that we look at what we can do to make sure that we are more fiscally responsible with this facility. When I look at this and talk about, what we do give and what we do as far as co-sponsorships and how we fit all that into this, I ran a carnival club. I know how much money's raised, how much money's spent. When we look at the fiscal responsibility for us to have a facility that meets the standards, and if we don't do things now, we just might not have a facility at all, that we got to make some tough choices and do some things that for the best of that facility. And so based on that and based on the research we did, that's how we put it in this agreement.
So I mean, what my point was is that everything in here is going up, be it
Yes, sir.
Carnival Club or nonprofit or anything else. So it's going up proportionate,
Yes.
evidently from the research that y'all have done. And I just wanted to bring up something else that Mr. Harding mentioned about it was difficult to read. Hopefully within the next 2 weeks or so, we'll have a new copy in our council office so that things will be a little bit easier to read. But again, what you're saying is this is proportionate across the board, that you looked at it in terms of our operation of the Civic Center. And for people who do not know, the Civic Center never makes a profit, okay? But we can only drain our budget so much without bringing in more revenue, is what it boils down to. We all need other projects as well in this parish. So, all right, thank you for clearing that up.
Mr. Pledger,
I'll yield for a second to go into the next item.
Mr. Trosclair,
Thank you. Well, if we're gonna eliminate some nonprofit, non-commercial organizations, let's eliminate all of them. Let's don't single out a handful of them. Regarding the Civic Center not making money, historically has not made money, but it has been on the incline in the last several years. And we did take $60,000 out of their operating budget this year to repair the escalators or tear down the escalator in the building over here. So does that $60,000 reflect in their losses of the year?
So we did not move it from there to the escalators.
press your button.
And if you want to remove the discount for all the nonprofits, we can, if that's what you want to do. I mean, being a president of a carnival club, as much as I know they bring to the table and everything else, to define a nonprofit of whether or not you look at it with activities, if it's fair that we get rid of all the nonprofit discounts, we could definitely look at doing that. But we got to have some level of balance, and we got to make sure that, when we look at what discounts have been provided in the past and what people don't have to pay for, and all the stuff that's been waived, we got to pick somewhere, and it's something that I love Mardi Gras just as much as everybody else. But again, Mardi Gras costs the parish, over $500,000. And at some point, we got to try to figure out a way to get some of that funding balanced, and again, I don't want to charge anybody for anything that they don't use. But at this time, we did based on what everybody else is doing and what we see across the state in the similar facilities.
Well, Mardi Gras does return more than $2 million a year to the parish. So I still don't think we need to single out, carnival clubs or any nonprofit. If you classify nonprofit, non-commercial, you nonprofit, non-commercial. If we're gonna do one, let's do them all. If we're not gonna do any, let's don't do any. My opinion. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Ms. Malden? Yes, sir. All right, I'm going to put your light back on. Go ahead, Ms. Malden.
So just to clear up, we did do a budget amendment It was from a capital project fund called the Transfer from Civic Center Admin Building. That did not come from Civic Center's operations budget. It was some funding that had been sitting on there that could be used for the Civic Center or an admin building, which would be included for the government towers. That funding had been there for a while, so we moved it to where it could be utilized. But it did not come from Civic Center's operating account.
Mr. Champagne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, because, using some of the venues as a nonprofit, are y'all concerned that people start moving other places and you don't have the utilization, and I guess you're causing some of them to leave and you have less utilization of the building? I just see other venues raising their prices, and as a nonprofit, they're not utilizing those facilities anymore. And so are we costing ourselves out of utilization? That's all I would worry about. And then you have less revenue coming in. Just a question. Have y'all considered that?
Mr. Bergeron, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, we have. I can tell you, I've used the Civic Center numerous times because it was almost half the price in a lot of cases of all the comparing venues around the parish. And so, again, it's not something we want to do, but unfortunately, when you don't adjust prices since 1997, at a certain point, if we can't afford to keep the Civic Center maintained and open, we have to make a tougher decision on whether or not we have to raise some fees, since we hadn't done it in that time period. And again, comparing it to the rest of the facilities in the parish, around the parish, Thibodeau Civic Center, going as far as the Lario Center and looking at what other facilities are being used. And I know we're currently booked until 2026. You can't get a weekend for the Civic Center and Municipal Auditorium and those kind of things. And so, and again, at the end of the day, it's about balancing the budget and trying to make sure that we have enough funding to maintain that facility. We're still looking for $800,000 for the Civic Center so we could fix the other bleacher that's we're not able to fix with IDA funding. So at some point, we got to find that $800,000 somewhere so we can have two sets of functioning bleachers working safely and at the level they need to. If anybody has a better idea for how we can do that, we definitely are all ears. But again, we did a comparative study of all the facilities in our region and in the state, and trying to get it matched up where we can be fiscally responsible and at the same time make sure that we do have a place for our people to use, our residents to use, that is up to the standard. Due to the fact that we hear a lot of times that how deplorable of a condition the Civic Center's in or some of the other facilities in, and unfortunately, thankful to some hurricanes, we've been able to get some repairs in place that does increase the standard of them. So, at the end of the day, we got to balance this out, and sometimes we got to make tough decisions. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Harding?
Yeah, and I think we've actually created a nice conversation. And if you notice on the agenda, it says call for a public hearing. So we have some time to actually create conversation, get an opportunity from the public, and once we get the opportunity from the public, we just go to work and do what we need to do. But I must say that everything else is going up, so I have no problem with increases. It's just the fact that the simple wording that we have to work on that can be fair to everyone and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Mr. Babin?
Yeah, that was my statement as well, Mr. Harding. This is calling for a public hearing 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks from now. We've had a lot of good discussion on this. Questions can be asked and answered. The public has the opportunity to come before us in 2 weeks, and if it needs to be changed, then we move the process forward. But this is a motion just to bring it to public hearing 2 weeks from now.
And
Or, excuse
Mr.
me, 30 days from now, November the 20th.
Mr. Pledger?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in the conversation, I've heard a few things, and I got a couple questions, I guess, it's generated for me. Mr. Trustclair made a comment in regards to bleachers or the elevators here. Ms. Candace kind of clarified that came from a fund where we kind of had some funds or something left over. But then Mr. Bergeron mentioned that we have bleachers, and I remembered that we had some bleachers, chairs, something like that we had to, we're looking to get some new ones. And my question there is, taking that money and putting toward the elevators, could we have used that maybe towards the bleachers, or that it kind of didn't fit the objective of where we got those funds from? And, you know, if it's safety related, I'm thinking risk ranking and all that's taking place, but that's my question. If now we're just kind of being counterproductive in that, and it's just a question.
Yeah, you're talking about a big difference in funding. The bleachers were $800,000. I think we're looking at possibly somewhere between $60,000 and maybe $100,000 to remove the escalators that are non-functioning in Government Tower as we're doing the rest of our remodel right now. So, no brainer to get that done so that we can finish our remodel for the hurricane damage.
You had something else?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a note here. You know, we're talking about $700 for carnival clubs that I know I was part of one that raised over $500,000. Just Mardi Gras Day was $100,000 of expenses. So I don't think we're going to break the bank. There's a few different opportunities for the carnival clubs here to work with us on this, but again, we're talking about $700 for an event, and I just my experience running a carnival club, I know I can find $700.
That would be the cost for
Yes.
them, or a $700 increase?
$700 increase,
From what to what?
2,500 to 3,200. So at the end of the day, on a $500,000 budget, I know not all the clubs are that size, but on a $500,000 budget, $700 at the end of the day to make sure we have a sustainable building that can make sure we can host events for the next 20 years is, I think, the most importance in this. And we'll have a conversation with anybody that has a concern or issue with that.
I do have a question. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask it. Yeah, it's another concrete example. How would it affect, say, for instance, Terrebonne Parish School Board that has 5 nights at the end of the school year for graduation? Go ahead.
So that's and Kim had actually brought that question to us. One of the things I'm working through with not only this situation, but when you look at something like the school board, there are things that they pay for, we pay for. Going through those agreements and understanding that we're fair to everybody, and that's something that we are in the process of taking on next, because I think that is a valuable conversation. But I know there's situations where it isn't real clear, and sometimes things are paid for or not paid for, but we are going to go through and have that conversation like we're doing with every other organization we work with, whether it be the airport commission, levy district. We're having conversations. What are the rules of engagement? What are we responsible for? What are they responsible for? And so that is stuff that we are working on. I just don't have that right now.
So they're not included in this ordinance, or are they included in?
As I understand it, and I could double check, but as I understand it, there is different agreements in place that I know that they're using things for graduation, and then recreation uses some things for all their, for like the gyms and all. But as far as I understand, that is separate and apart from this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Truesclair.
Yeah, I agree. But $700, it is just for one part of the building. It's not the whole building. So there's going to be increases more than 700. But if $700 is not going to break Carnival Club, $700 shouldn't break a $250 million budget Terrebonne Parish either.
And Mr. Pledger.
One other question, Mr. Hamner brought it to my attention, or when in us discussing the school board, we got, Mr. Bergeron, you mentioned we have some agreements out there. Are they paying anything to have graduations or anything like that? Just, I'm curious now.
Go ahead, Mr. Bergeron.
Yeah, I understand it's waived. Again, that's something that we want to go through because I think there's a lot of conversations around. Like, I think sometimes gyms have to be paid for that belong to the school district, and then again, at the end of the day, I think we need to go through all that and figure out who gets what, if it's fair, and make sure that we're all on the same page. But that's a much bigger conversation.
Yeah. And it's an governmental agreement. They get it for those nights, and we give them something for certain time. And it's kind of it's difficult to understand. So I'm glad
That's
you're
across
looking
the
into
board
that.
through all of our facilities, right? I mean, municipal auditoriums, we're going
Yeah.
through that conversation. Again, just to make sure that's fair and equitable for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a good conversation and process to go through.
And any other lights? All right, seeing no more lights, members vote your machine. Remember, this is for a public hearing. We have 8 yeas, 1 nay for the public hearing. Thank you. And item 5, consider the introduction of an ordinance to amend Chapter 16 of the Terrebonne Parish Code of Ordinances by repealing current Section 16 to 56 and enacting a new Section 16 to 56 for the purposes of regulating mobile food vendors, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 6:30 PM. That's the correct date, right, Michelle? Thank you. Moved by Mr. Babin, seconded by Ms. Chauvin. Mr. Trosclair.
Yes, thank you. Question, does this ordinance prevent, other than special events, trailer truck vendors or trailer vendors operating within the historical city district? I don't see it on here. I'm just wondering, we may have another ordinance somewhere else that prevents it. I'm not sure.
So this is removing that limitation and putting the fact that the property has to be zoned for commercial to have food trucks on it. So it's not allowing food trucks on the streets and all that stuff. You still have to have a special event permit to do that. But this is just saying if you have a property zoned for it anywhere in the parish, that you could put mobile trucks on it or trailers or whatever.
Okay, well, once again,
Oop, I'm sorry, I turned you off. Go ahead.
if we're gonna keep trying to build downtown Homer into the historical district it is, I think that would be a definite eyesore on a daily basis. And, once again, I'm against this as it is. If it, for events, downtown events, is great. But I just don't think, we got brick and mortar businesses that are trying to survive downtown. And if we start putting, truck vendors and trailer vendors all over downtown, cutting into their business, I don't think it's a good idea.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yeah, so we did have a meeting and brought in all the restaurant owners with downtown that would make the meeting and have a conversation about the fact that this is going to provide the opportunity to increase foot traffic. There's also studies that show, and I'll study as close as being in Lafayette, for every dollar that you invest in foot traffic, you end up with a $10 return on that investment. And so even the new business owner, Ember, that's going to be locating where where Milano used to be, thought that this was a great opportunity to increase foot traffic. Again, we're just working on making sure, that we have, it's zoned for it. We got all the buy-in, and we offered our restaurant owners downtown an opportunity to give feedback on this ordinance. And we did not put this to the council until everybody agreed that it worked for them. And so we already have that buy-in and had that conversation. So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page that we did keep those people in mind, and they all see a benefit of providing an opportunity for more foot traffic, bringing more businesses to their restaurants.
Ms. Chauvin?
This doesn't allow them to stay in a certain section, like a certain venue to stay there. They have to do commissary, so they have to
Got a
move it
commissary,
out.
they got to leave
They
every
gotta-
day.
Yeah, so they're not gonna stay there.
Right. For comparison, there was a place on the east side of town that ended up becoming permanent. And with the way the, forgive me, the health department, health
Louisiana.
department of health
Mhm.
made some changes. So we're working off of what their requirements are. You can't really change anything that's been put in place, but anything moving forward, they have to leave every day.
So the Louisiana Department of
Health.
Health made changes
As far as I
for
understand.
someone to stay there because I had a food truck. I know what the requirements are. You're not supposed to stay there without the commissary.
Chris can
You
confirm.
have
Hold
to
on.
move.
I know we had one that, for whatever reason, was allowed, but that's
Yeah.
gonna be addressed going forward.
Okay.
Every, situation's a little bit different, but, and I'm not sure exactly which one you're talking about because there's more than one. But I know of one on the east side where they stayed every day. They ended up building a commissary on the same property. And
Mm-hmm.
in those instances, the Department of Health and the parish got together and said, okay, well, we're just going to have to treat this as a permanent structure, so that in those instances, they had to go back and get other approvals, other permits to essentially make them permanent.
Right, because I know we have one in South Van that should not be there every single day, but it's there every single day. And we have a lot of people complaining about it.
Yeah, well, I know the one you're speaking about too, and we've already
Oh, no.
informed the property owner.
I get a text every time.
Yeah, and the
So-
Department of Health has, a lot of issues with mobile food vendors too. So
I
we're
was
trying to
just-
work with them on addressing our issues.
I don't think it's a bad deal. What I'm
Right.
saying is that's a totally separate thing, because if you went by the one by South Van, you would understand what I'm talking about in that area. It's pretty bad.
So one of the things we're doing in this ordinance is forcing those mobile units. So if there's 3 mobile units, they have to have 3 registrations.
Right.
So that's gonna be a registration with planning and zoning. With that, they're double checking to make sure they have everything they need with the Department of Health, everything they need as far as occupational license, sales tax, all those things are going through that process. And every year they could deny. On top of that, they're working on, it's a no permit or no permit ordinance, not ordinance, no permit fee, but they have to get a permit for each location they're gonna be at, right? So we'll put some things in place, definitely hold these food truck vendors accountable. But again, when you look at study after study about the more we make downtown walkable and the more we provide foot traffic to downtown, that it's not only a benefit to these mobile vendors, the restaurants that are already there, the other businesses that are there, it's a tenfold return on that investment. And so again, we got with the restaurant owners to not throw this on them. We wanted their feedback. We want to make sure they were on board, and nobody said, don't do this, right? Everybody was like, we support this. We think it's a great idea. And we love the fact that we brought them to the table to have this conversation.
Oh, no, I already asked you all my questions. I sent you emails of them. So all good.
Thank you, Ms. Chauvin. And Mr. Pledger.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a question in regards to the placement of the food trucks. Here in prohibitions, it says, item number 2, mobile food vendors are prohibited from being located on public property unless operating a separate public property use permit. Now, just to make sure that I'm clear, they're encouraged to be on private property or on
So
just side
we're
of the
saying
street or whatever?
that if they're gonna, in the parish, they could be on private property, but to be on public property, they have to have a special public permit for that. Does that make sense? In other words, we're saying private property around the parish, a food truck or a mobile truck can go there.
Right.
But if you want to be on public property, you got to get a special permit for that, and that's got to be approved.
Okay.
And
Mr. Paluski.
I just want to clarify something. You can get a public property use permit for a mobile food vendor. Well, they can operate on public property if they are operating under a public property use permit, which an event organizer would get. So if you're going to have a fundraiser or some sort of fair or festival, whether it's downtown or anywhere on public property, they would have that public property use permit. So they like the market at the marina. Okay, they have a public property use permit. But if I'm a mobile food truck operator or owner and I want to go set up on a public road just for the purpose of operating a food truck on the public, we are not going to approve a permit like that. It has to be for or through a festival or organized event or something like that. Now, we do have some wording in the new ordinance that there are some exemptions in addition to that public property use permit. Also, an exemption would be if the parish is inviting mobile food vendors to operate on publicly owned property. So, like if we had a parish employee appreciation day at the government tower, and so we had invited food trucks in for lunch, so employees could come and patron those food trucks. We could do that, but they wouldn't have to have a public property use permit for that.
Yeah, 'cause
I'm sorry, I turned you
oh,
off.
no, you're fine. Yeah, because, I can't imagine if we're having outside of a festival, fair, or carnival or something like that downtown, I mean, there's only probably 2 or 3 businesses downtown that could even have a food truck, on its property, and outside of that, it'd be along the street. And of course, if it's a festival or something, then the streets are closed, so you're not just parking. Yeah, I mean, you barely can park a car on the, sides of the street. It'll have to be on one of the back streets for it to happen, so.
Right.
All right, I'm good, I understand. I'm good.
Mr. Voisin. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm just curious, 2 questions. One, like, what prompted it? Like, I would assume some things have taken place that prompted this to be written? Or is it strictly just, mitigation for the future?
So I'll tell you that, one of my goals and just something I've seen through time is to get more foot traffic downtown, right? And with the historic district blocking that, it just didn't allow for that opportunity, right? And so when you look at the buzz or the feel that we're trying to create with our downtown and making it walkable and providing just really to be kind of a cool, hip, different kind of place for people to come visit. When you look at cities that have done this and the growth that they've experienced, it's one of those where we go, man, we'd love to have that opportunity, right? So, we've had a couple situations of a couple food trucks, a couple police people that started as food trucks that are now brick and mortar, right? Fat Boy Phillies is one, Body by Thomas is another one, So as I look through and myself as a business that started out of my house, doing computer consultant work, definitely working with zoning to make sure that we are business friendly and provide opportunities with businesses. Again, I just think it just provides more foot traffic, which ends up being a return on that investment. And I think that, the beneficial returns of that are just something that, you look back 5 years from now, you could be like, man, I'm so glad we did that, and really working to create that walkable, inviting downtown with hopefully us being able to take over Main Street through DOTD and having that be a parish area where we can do some cool things with trees and curbs and everything else. So it just kind of all comes together to what we want to be as a future downtown.
Okay. And so I may be misunderstanding then, so it's strictly geared for downtown, not the entire parish?
No, it's the whole parish.
Yeah,
We're,
that's
we're,
what
we're releasing a limitation that was downtown, and basically making downtown work the same way the entire parish did.
Okay. And what's the permit cost for a guy with a food truck that
$100 per unit
per
year.
unit, per year?
For the registration. But if you're going to get a
On
permit,
location?
no, on locations are all free. So if I have 5 mobile units, I pay $500. The permit to get, because we want to make sure you got owner's permission to go somewhere. Those are free.
So I mean, there's food trucks that move around to different places. Do they have to get a permit every time they switch locations?
They have to have a permit for where they're going to be. Now that permit could be good for a couple years, but that has nothing to do with the registration for us to make sure it's a legitimate mobile vendor when it relates to Department of Health and all our licenses and permits and everything. So they could say they want to go to, trying to think of, Walmart, right? You go to Walmart, you can go to Target or whatever. If they have the owner's permission, they have to get a permit to go there, but that permit is free. All they have to do is register their unit, $100 per unit. If they have 5, it's $500. If it's one, it's $100 once a year. So when we do that once a year, it allows us to go back through that process to make sure they have everything they need, they're up to date, they're meeting all the rules they're supposed to meet, but it's $100 per mobile unit.
But if, let's say, they do 6 locations in a year with one truck, no additional cost.
No additional cost.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chauvin?
Okay, Chris, you just kind of piqued something for me when you talked about the parish inviting food trucks in, like you could do that for the public property. Who's going to enforce the laws like with the LDH thing if they don't have to get a permit? You're not making sure that they're licensed by the state. And so my worry is, because I'm in the shrimp industry, is the menu labeling law that all these food trucks are supposed to adhere to when they're using shrimp. Who's enforcing this if they don't have to get a permit because the parish has invited them in?
When you say don't get a permit, we don't have a situation where people aren't getting a permit as I'm aware of.
That's not what I said.
Okay, please clarify. Thank you.
You got your, there we go. Go
Okay.
ahead, Chris.
So what I was saying is that you can operate on public property if the parish is inviting you in. You don't have, like, if we're having an employee appreciation day, use that as example, we're not going to go get a public use permit for ourselves.
Okay.
But going back to your statement earlier, I mean, with the registration, it's annual. So everybody's registration expires June 30th, just like your fishing license. So you got to come in and re-register. When you come in and re-register, you got to have your DMV information. So
Okay.
make sure all these are road ready. You got to have your approval letter from Department of Health. You got to have your Terrebonne Parish occupational license. There's other things that you have to
No.
have.
I'm good.
So we're watching that.
No,
And
I'm good.
if at any time during the year, if somebody goes sideways on any of those, you get south with sales tax or the Department of Health or whatever, the ordinance also says we can revoke your registration and any location permit you've been issued.
Okay.
So that
No,
it's
you
policing throughout the
got it.
year.
Got it. Totally understand now. Okay. Thank you.
If you find somebody selling imported shrimp, you let us
don't
know.
you
We'll
worry.
go
I'm
find
on
them.
that. I am on that.
Hey, we have a parish ordinance for that, by the way.
All right, Mr. Harding.
Yeah, Kim, I know we're going to want to move on. Kim had actually brought about a point to me because if a person is found in violation of this, what would who polices it? What is the fine for it? And are they going to be like those folk? We can actually know who they are. If you go to a barber shop, or you go to a convenience store, they have the certificates and they have to be with them. They have to be displayed.
So, okay, who polices it? Everyone. Just like we, with all of our ordinances, a lot of it's complaint driven. People report it. Other mobile food vendors would report it. The public. I mean, yes, our people would be out there too, but we're not going to go back every day and check on these guys. We just can't do that. So a lot of it's just going to be, reporting by the public like on everything else. As far as fees or fines or whatever, if somebody is found to be in violation of something, I mean, there's no fine for it, but the penalty is you get your permit pulled, you get your registration revoked, so you're shut down. You're not going to be able to operate. And Department of Health now, I'm not speaking for them. They might have penalties or fines, and same for sales tax. But as far as planning and zoning goes and the permit, we just revoke your permit. And I think you had another question or statement. I can't remember
Having
what it was.
in your possession, I think that's what.
Oh yeah, so I'm sure you've all been to businesses and you see the occupational license up on the wall. The ordinance requires that they display the registration up on the wall as well. Also, one of the new items in here is inspection by a fire department, so that has to be visible as well. And the fire chiefs have already discussed if somebody gets an inspection done by, say, Homa Fire Department, but one of the locations they're operating in is Koto or Shriever or whatever, they'll honor each other's inspections. You don't have to go get it inspected at each fire district.
I'm good.
No other lights? Okay, Michelle, Neil?
Yes, thanks. So I wanted to chime in on the penalty portion of it. So you won't see it in the ordinance that you have in front of you because we didn't address that in this ordinance, but there is a penalty provided for in Article 3, Division 1, which applies to the whole article. And the penalty, that is going to apply to this mobile truck article, says violation of any provisions in this article will be punished by a fine not exceeding $200 or by imprisonment for up to 10 days. So that's a criminal penalty. So I guess if we get to that point, we can send our police officers out there to send out criminal fines.
Okay. I'm curious to hear from, on November 20th, how our restaurant owners downtown feel about it. And that's, hopefully will, be the tell-all for us all up here. Seeing no further lights, members, vote your machine. We have 8 yeas, 1 nay. Motion to adjourn by Ms. Chauvin, seconded by, nobody wants to go home, Mr. Harding. Members, vote your machine. Nine yeas. Motion, okay. Shortest agenda and the longest discussion.
Yeah. Notice to the public, if you wish to address the council, please complete the public wishing to address the council form located on either end of the counter and give it to either the chairman or the council clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. All comments must be addressed to the council as a whole. Addressing individual council members or staff is not allowed. Speakers should be courteous in their choice of words and actions, and comments shall be limited to the issues and cannot involve individuals or staff-related matters. Thank you. All cell phones, electronic devices used for communication should be silenced for the beginning of the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting of the Public Service Committee to order, and we'll have an invocation by Mr. Champagne and a pledge. Please rise.
Heavenly Father, as we gather here today as stewards of this parish, grant us the guidance and clarity to work with integrity and compassion. May our decisions be just, considerate, and in the best interest of our parish. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Champagne. Ms. Charlie, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Pledger, Mr. Harding, Mr. Voisin, Mr. Amity, Mr. Champagne, Mr. Hamner, Mr. Babin,
Here.
Ms. Chauvin, Mr. Trustclair. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum present.
Thank you, Ms. Charlie. Item 1, resolution authorizing the purchase of mitigation credits from RES, Resource Environmental Solutions, LLC, to purchase 0.9 acres of fresh marsh for the Dularge West D18 pump station replacement, Terrebonne Drainage Department, identified as project number 20-DRA-03, and authorizing the signing of the necessary agreements for this mitigation as required by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Moved by Mr. Harding. Second by Mr. Voisin. Seeing no lights, the members vote your machines. Votes 9-0. Thank you very much. That's for my council district. Item number 2, resolution authorizing the execution of change order number 3, balancing for the construction agreement for parish project number 19-BRG-25, Hollywood Road Bridge Project, Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hamner. Second by Ms. Chauvin. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Vote is 9-0. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Hamner and I shared that as it was before. Number 3, resolution providing approval of amendment number 4 to the engineering agreement for parish project number 21-DRA-10, state project number H.009237 by Terrebonne Dredging Project, Terrebonne, Louisiana.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Amadei, second by Mr. Hamner. Seeing no, I do have some lights, excuse me. Okay, Carl. Mr. Harding?
I think this will be pointing out, and we're looking at roughly $600,000 for engineering fees, and we're looking at, I don't know how long this money set in by your Terrebonne dredging project. You know what I mean? So $600,000 is a lot of money to wait 10, 15 years just setting off in there. We need the work done. The other thing about that, we've actually, I was in attendance with some of the administration with some folk up north, and we want the understanding when this is actually done, you know what I mean, water flow down here, hill. It's kind of difficult for it to go uphill. So, you know what I mean, using the consideration, everything that's involved with this, hopefully we can actually get these permits to be done and get it off the road. You know what I mean? $600,000, that's a heck of an investment to have it set for 10, 15 years. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Ms. Chauvin?
Yeah, mine is just simple. I'm just looking at the numbers back here, and I'm looking at landowner meetings for $30,000. Anybody can clarify what are we paying for 30,000? I mean, who are you meeting with, and what's the deal for 30 grand?
Ms. Malden?
Yeah.
Mr. Lerat?
Right, and this is an estimate. These meetings haven't really happened yet for that line item, but there's gonna be some land access conversations, right? And people concerned about their bulkheading. I think making considerations to protect certain properties along the bayou might be in order too, depending on the location. So any costs incurred for that will probably have to be done. But again, $30,000 is an estimate at this point because that work has not been done.
Okay.
Land access is critical, and then making sure that nothing really happens to damage any property to the best of our ability is probably part of that too.
Okay, it just caught me off guard. That was the one thing I'm like, what are we meeting for? Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Lerat, while you still have your
Alright.
light on, this project, see if I can say it, has changed in terms of the terminology we're gonna use on the type of dredge that we're gonna use to do this property. Up until this point, they talked about one certain type of dredge to do it. That's why this project is taking so long. I mean, Mr. Bacheron is shaking his head. Am I making sense when I'm asking that question? If you'd like to.
So you can dredge things in a couple different ways. You do a mechanical dredge with like an excavator or something like that, or you can do a hydraulic dredge where you actually suck it out. You have to find a place to pull these spoils. The reason why this sat for so long is that it wasn't really feasible with the amount of money we're given to hydraulically dredge to -6 the whole bayou, and people were just trying to figure it out. The geotech work that was done was based on the assumption that we're going to do a -6 dredge that could cause some bank instability in town. When we looked at this project, looked at the funding that we had, and look what we're trying to achieve, which is flow, right, and better drainage, it made more sense to do a mechanical dredge. What made this project more cost effective and more feasible. So yes, there's different types of dredges, and we adjusted the scope to fit our budget and our needs.
And that's my point. Prior to this, it was more of the suction dredge. It goes along the lines of what Ms. Chauvin just asked about $30,000 for landowner meetings. There would have been a lot more cost involved to pump it on somebody's property. We had problems with that, and that's why this got held up. So the terminology change, the different types of dredge that we're gonna use is going to move this project on a lot quicker and a lot better. Because like you said, the whole purpose here is flow.
I think it's just a problem that we all can drive down by Terrebonne, and that crosses several district lines, and you can see the problems that we have. And we saw the problems that we had during Hurricane Francine. That's a drainage bayou. That's a drainage artery that got really high during Francine, and will continue to do so if we don't take the time to maintain it. And yeah, it's a lot of money. That's why we can't let it sit for another 10, 15 years. The longer we let it sit, the worse it's going to be, the more money it's going to cost.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Kim,
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when we talk about $600,000 on an $8 million project, we have to have our match with a lot of these projects. And, I think it really sets the standard for what we want to do throughout the parish and what we're able to do with the rest of the bayous. And so we're able to look and say, what we did by Terrebonne is what we want to do down the rest of the bayous, and using that same concept gets people to believe that we can do it. And again, we're looking to do this all the way to the parish line, along with some other things that'll come into play, which is going to allow us to introduce more water into Bayou Terrebonne. But yeah, it's just something that, after all this time, and we definitely want to make sure that we're doing engineering for projects, and to Carly's point, for projects that make an impact sooner, a lot sooner rather than later. And not just do engineering to do engineering, but to do engineering for projects that will make an impact that we'll all see within, our current terms and lifetimes. So,
Yeah, and that's my point about changing the type of dredge. This would be more than an $8 million project if we would not have changed it in this direction. So we're gonna get the best bang for the buck, but it takes engineering to do it. So, thank you. Seeing no further lights, members, vote your machines. Item passed 9-0. Number 4, resolution authorizing the parish president to enter into a contract for engineering services with Grissom Smith for the Civic Center Boulevard at Valhalla Boulevard, State Project Number H.012859.
So move.
Move Mr. Hamner. Second by Mr. Harding. Mr. Voisin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see Gresham Smith. Is that the only engineering firm that could do this work?
Ms. Malden.
Mr. Voisin, this is a project that we have an agreement with DOTD, and they are the ones that go out and get the engineering and the bids and stuff. So we had no say in what we were doing.
Thank you very much.
That's it, Mr. Voisin.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Clyde.
Yeah, this is the roundabout where you come out at Val High at that light it goes into the Civic Center and then,
There's no light.
by the Y. Okay, gotcha.
Mr. Harding.
I'm glad you mentioned DOTD. I was kind of discombobulated. I was wondering if that was the same company that's associated with no lighting coming through the tunnel from the east side to the west side, but then thank you.
All right, Mr. Harding. All right, seeing no further lights, members, vote your machines. Nine yeas, 0 nays. Motion passes. Item 5, resolution to authorize the parish president to execute an intergovernmental agreement on behalf of Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government, TVCG, with Terrebonne Levy and Conservation District, TLCD, to perform work together for the purpose of designing, constructing, and operating the Buy Black Pump Station project, aka Geraldine Pump Station.
So move.
Move Mr. Hamner, second by Mr. Harding, and we have a few lights. Mr. Amadei?
I'll let the attorney go.
All right. Ms. Neal?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I talked to Candace Malden and also to Parish President Bergeron on this one. There are a few things that we need to check out as far as funding and as far as availability of funding. So I think administration is going to have to pull this one from tonight's agenda, if you would help us out with that.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Chauvin makes a motion to, or would it, Ms. Chauvin makes a motion to pull this item from the agenda tonight. second by Mr. Champagne. Mr. Trosclair?
Yes, I was, under the understanding that the, CPRA was gonna fund this project totally and actually pay for operation of it.
No, I don't think that's, Clyde, can I go to Mr. Bergeron first?
Yeah.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yeah, so the problem is the applications we had for HMGP and CBGDR didn't necessarily say that we're going to use levy district as a subrecipient. So we have to check with both of those groups to make sure that that's an opportunity. If it's not an opportunity, then CPRA is going to have to give the funding to us. It is our intent to do this project, but we have to make sure that we can do it accordingly with money we're going to be getting from two different sources.
Mr. Trosclair?
Yeah, and CPRA was the overage.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hamner?
Yeah, well, I think Jason just cleared that up. It was my understanding we have the funding. When you said there was a problem with the funding, it's not that we don't have it. We got to just get some kinks worked out. Am I correct?
Ms. Malden?
We have HMGP funding. We have an application in for CDBG, so we're trying to make sure that it can all be used with all of the parties now that are going to be involved.
Correct. Speaking of CDBG, specifically, do we have any feedback from them as far as these projects like Geraldine that,
What?
Well, since Geraldine's part of the CDBG, it would be pertinent.
This is a specific one.
I mean, I can tell you, we got awarded a couple projects, and we're going to be announcing that here shortly, and we're working through the applications, but
Okay.
not to know if that
Fair
one's
enough.
off the top of my head was awarded. As of right now, I don't think it was, but that's the, we want to make sure with both of those. Yeah, that one has not been awarded.
Okay.
And just from my point of reference too, Mr. Trosclair mentioned the CPRA. It was my understanding that the CPRA was going to front the money in terms of, and I'm just using that terminology. The CDBG money application was not complete. So to get this project moving, there was going to be some type of agreement with CPRA. Am I correct on that or incorrect? Ms. Malden?
So what our research that we're trying to do right now and the questions that have come up is there are a lot of strings attached to CDBG DR money. And we want to ensure that usually with CDBG DR money, you cannot take any action on any project until it's completely approved. So we are working through that right now, asking the right questions to make sure that if we did start anything ahead of time, that it wouldn't cause us to lose that funding. So it's just a matter of crossing our T's and dotting our I's. It's the first one that I have ever experienced that we would be using HMGP, CDBG, and CPRA and levy district all involved in one project.
Right.
So there's a lot of working parts that we want to just make sure that we have the okay from everybody before we say, yes, let's go ahead and move forward.
And the main thing that we said tonight was, and Mr. Bergeron's got his light on again, is that we want this project done. Mr. Bergeron?
Right, and just for clarification, we're at 9 and some change from HMGP, 3 million from CDBGDR, and then CPRA was going to cover the difference, which they could say anywhere between 3 and 5 million. But if we were to get some work started in engineering, and then CDBGDR come back and say you can't do that, then we lose our $3 million match,
Correct.
of which, based on the agreement, the parish would be responsible for.
Right. So you're all crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. Thank you, Ms. Malden. Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Seeing no further lights, members vote your machines. Vote is 9-0, motion passes. Item number 6, consider the introduction of an ordinance to authorize the parish president to execute on behalf of Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government, TVCG, a lease of commercial space between Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government and Terrebonne Children's Advocacy Center to lease space in the TBCG-owned building at 7910 Main Street, Louisiana, 70360, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, October 30th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hamner, second by Ms. Chauvin. Seeing no lights, members vote your machines. Motion is 9-0. Motion passes. Item number 7, consider the introduction of an ordinance authorizing the parish president to enter into an agreement, into an amendment, number 1, to the 1997 intergovernmental agreement, lease and sublease with Recreation District 11 to remove the adult softball complex from the agreement and return care, custody, and control of the adult softball complex to Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, October 30th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Ms. Chauvin, second by Mr. Harding. Seeing no lights, members, vote your machines. Motion is 9-0. Motion passes. Item number 8, consider the introduction of an ordinance to amend, rescind, and act certain sections, Chapter 14, nuisance abatement of the Terrebonne Parish Code of Ordinances to provide for alternative methods of notice violations, to eliminate violations for excessive noise, to facilitate efficient processing of fees, to establish a protocol for canceling nuisance liens, to establish a warning period for nuisance actions, to stack violations for multiple offenses on one or more properties owned by similar owners, to standardize judicial review of violations proceedings, to prohibit persons in violation of the nuisance code for building on parish-owned property, adjudicated or surplus immovable property, and to provide for relative matters, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, October 30th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Ms. Chauvin, second by Mr. Amadei. Seeing no lights, members, vote your machines. 9-0, motion passes. Item 9, consider the introduction of an ordinance to amend Article 5, Chapter 21 of the Terrebonne Parish Code, Section 21-87, to add provisions for the removal of Recreation District Board members, to amend Sections 21-93 and 21-94 to require the repair of unsafe equipment or premises, to require compliance with the Policies and Procedures Manual, and to authorize Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government to take certain action if the Recreation District fails to act, to adopt Section 21-99 to create the Recreation Advisory Committee, and to amend Section 21-97 to establish deadlines for the adoption of district and comprehensive master plans, and provide for other matters, and call a public hearing on Wednesday, October 30th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Ms. Chauvin, second by Mr. Amadei. Mr. Harding.
Yes, again, this is going to be a public hearing, and my conversation is basically going back to what has been going on for several years, and whether we're going to look at the fact that are we gaining enough revenue to actually support, are these recreation districts gaining enough revenue? I disagree with some of the things that here. I just talked to Ms. Neal. Hopefully we can address this prior to the public hearing, and I appreciate her efforts that she put forth prior to this moment. So I'm just going to put it out here rather simply. These districts have been set up for a reason, to have less government in it. I personally do not like the term oversight. Now, I do like the term assistance. I also, when I served on the board, and looking at this as it's written, it was an unwritten rule, I'm assuming, I guess now, that if a person missed so many meetings, their term expired, they resigned, they're convicted of felonies and stuff like that. Some of these things here with a 9-member board up here, and it's kind of been in the past that too much politics may have played a role in some of the appointments, not just with the recreation district, but in the other boards and commissioners that we actually have here. If you don't know somebody, and somebody don't make a approach to the liking of the overall atmosphere of this particular council or other people, then they can actually be held accountable for certain actions that they actually have happen to be innocent to. Just like this council, it says, well, put the board on oversight. If we have an individual that sits on a board, someone up here that is to the detriment of not only the board, but in the consolidated government, you just can't hold the whole board accountable for one person's actions. We also had in the past a parish president appointed board. I think that board at the time it was ran, it had greater opportunities to do things and to avoid something like this to come up to say, and actually, I felt as if, me personally, I felt as if that this wording passed themselves on the chest, this, and saying we can put anybody off the board when they want to. I think that's a wrong approach as a human being, and I don't think it sounds as if that a person can get a fair chance. So as we're going forward for the public hearing, I'm not saying any individual recreation district is being targeted or individual person is being targeted. And I'm looking to have conversation in the near future with my colleagues to look at this and consider my opinion toward this public hearing. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to say something. We up until this point, we've always had the ability with the terminology I did not like was with or without cause. I think that it's, I don't think that's where your politics comes in. I don't think we should be getting rid of or eliminating someone from a board because there has no cause. There has to be cause somewhere, okay? But again, some of this stuff has gone on and on and on and on for years. So I think they're trying to address it here. I think this is a move in the right direction. I think the creation of an advisory committee that has some meat to it will definitely help out because if we want them to self-police themselves, they have to participate. And then we can't, as a council, we can't function without boards and committees. So we need a good, strong committee to give us good recommendations, and then we can move forward. So I think this is moving forward. So seeing no further lights, members, vote your machines. Motion is 9-0, motion passes. Motion adjourned by Ms. Chauvin, second by Mr. Harding. Members, vote your machines. Motion passes. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good night.